Welcome to the Teaching Journeys podcast, hosted by Dave Roberts. Humanity possesses a unique skill, the ability to pass knowledge from one generation to the next. This podcast embraces that ability, offering learning opportunities through conversations with extraordinary guests. Dave aims to leave a positive mark on individuals around the world. So before you dive into today's episode, please share this podcast with your network, including friends, family, and colleagues. And please consider leaving a rating or review. Your support makes all the difference.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Teaching Journeys Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Roberts, and today it is my pleasure to have as my guest, Alexis Leigh. Alexis is a writer and advocate for self-healing through unconventional methods, including psychedelics and deep inner work. With a background in finance and consulting, her personal journey led her away from the corporate world and into a life centered around authenticity and transformation. Pain is a Portal to Beauty is her first book, a testament to the power of feeling deeply and embracing the unknown. Alexis, welcome to the Teaching Journeys Podcast. I've been looking forward to our conversation for some time now.
Thanks, Dave, for having me today. I'm glad to be here.
You're welcome. And we got to give a shout out to Candace Snyder. Candace is a dear friend, one of my favorite podcast hosts, and she's just a beautiful soul. And after she interviewed you, she emailed me and said, I have a guest for you that I think would be really a great fit for your podcast. And I think one pre-chat later, we discovered alignment on quite a few areas, and we find ourselves at this moment recording. So I'm thankful for the opportunity to be able to speak with you about your journey. And it has been an interesting one for sure.
Yeah, it has. I mean, as all are when we take a moment to look back at it.
Well, the thing that I love about your bio is that your reliance on unconventional methods. And as I mentioned before we recorded, conventional wisdom, and for many individuals, is highly overrated. I had a mentor that said there's certain people you can go buy the book with, and there's other individuals you take the book and you throw it right out the window. It doesn't apply.
Yeah. I mean, what I find so often is that the conventional wisdom or whatever, certain things really help me at certain times, and then they don't work anymore, right? Like once I've grown enough with that wisdom, then I need to actually set it aside and find a different way. So I think having lots of flexibility around what it is that you take in, maybe conventional wisdom is exactly what you need at times. And then when you're ready, you'll go find another path.
Yeah, I think the techniques and the modalities we implement kind of evolve as we evolve and as our needs
Right.
change. And like you said, in certain situations, conventional wisdom might be indicated in your situation. In others who have faced really traumatic circumstances, conventional wisdom doesn't apply in all cases.
Yeah. I mean, you find what works for you.
Yeah.
And we're all so individual and unique given our experiences and who we are. But I also find sometimes it helps for me to wrestle with what everyone else is doing. It seems like, how is this not helping me, or why is this not working for me? And I wrestle with it enough, and that helps me find what does work for me. So everything, even if it doesn't resonate with you, it's teaching you what does resonate with you. It's something else, right?
Oh, absolutely. And, as I've said on my podcast and other podcasts, everything has something to teach us.
Yeah.
Even if we can't align with it, it still has something to teach us if we allow ourselves to be open to it.
Yeah. Openness. Yes.
Yeah, that's what is required if we're going to continue to evolve and continue to, I guess, make an impact on the world as well, too.
Yeah. But I find, I mean, just to be fair, right? It's you want the answer. It's so understandable that you want to get there and kind of stay cozy in that rightness.
Yeah.
And so I do notice how much I resist the next level of growth, because it's like, oh, but I wanted this to be the kind of forever thing. And that's just not what life is about, right? Life is about continually understanding who you are, understanding, how to navigate all of this stuff. I guess I have compassion for the desire for the answer, for the desire for the three keys to happiness, those kinds of things. But that's not been my experience.
And happiness is certainly part of our experience, but isn't the totality of our experience. And
Yeah.
I think just from your own experience, I think as we're soon going to find out, you had to get into the yang or the dark side of who we are,
Yeah.
the darkness. Because in order for us to see the light, we also have to see dark. We can't see light without dark.
Right.
We can't have joy without sadness. All of those, they're not
They
mutual.
do because it's what's true, right? It's what's real. And so if you want if you want true happiness and true joy, then you have to be open to what everything is. And it necessarily goes hand in hand, like you said. If you're not willing to look at your pain and be with the darkness, sometimes then you're numbing, right? And then you're not going to get access to stuff that's quite exquisite.
You have had some interesting experiences that have gotten you to this point in your life. Tell our audience about the major experiences that have shaped who Alexis Leigh is today.
Yeah, well, the major, I guess the salient experience of my childhood was that my mother was addicted to drugs and was going to go away to rehab and then just never came home. And 18 months after she went away to rehab, they found her body in a field. So, the way I could experience that as an 11 or 12-year-old was my mom died, and that's sad. That's all I could handle of that really complex departure. I just didn't have the emotional resources and support to be able to take in all of what happened. So I really packed away my pain because that's what I needed to survive. And then I lived out the life in the conventional way, as we've talked about, where, okay, you go to college, you get a good job, you get married, you have a kid, you're happy forever. That's kind of like, that was a life that I hoped for myself. And that's a life that I had. And then, one day in 2020, I was taking a walk in the woods and I heard a voice that said, if you die today, your life will have been a tragedy. And it was back to the resonance. Like, it was something that I didn't understand, but it resonated. So there's something very huge that I was missing in my life. And ultimately, it helped me tap into how deeply sad I was, even though I had gotten the life that I wanted for myself. I was so profoundly sad and lonely. And so those are kind of two, the mother dying and the way she left and packing away that pain. And then this kind of wake up moment that then launched a new path for me as I started to really stop numbing and try to understand the totality of my experience, which then opened the way for me to feel all of the goodness that I couldn't feel when I was numbing as well.
Did you recognize the voice that you heard?
I did not. I didn't know what it was, and again, it wasn't like a voice that anyone else could hear. It was kind of a message that became clear within me. I've had experiences like that since then, but that was the first time in my life where I heard that clear kind of verbal message. And I didn't know what it was, and it kind of didn't matter at that time. I was just like, it's true. Whatever this is, whether it's from something beyond me, whether it's ultimately, I think it was my own wisdom that was getting my attention. But at the time, it just resonated. And I finally just felt seen for how sad I was. It's like, for so long, I had all the good stuff. And so I should be happy. And other people have it worse, and all these things that make you feel like, why am I not grateful? And I can't admit to not being grateful because that makes me a bad person or something like that. So this finally gave me the freedom to feel the pain that I felt. And it was quite devastating, of course, but it was also, in a way, it's ecstatic when you wake up to your pain because you finally get to feel the thing you do feel. You get to recognize and be recognized for that.
And I remember one of my favorite lines from the book by John Green, The Fault in My Stars, is when the male protagonist said, pain demands to be felt. And there was
Yeah.
the truer words were never spoken because, we could try to run away from our pain, we could try to suppress it, but boy, it's just going to keep coming back until we decide to deal with it.
I can feel unrelenting and almost punishing at times when you really just don't want to feel it. But once I process the grief and once I'm on the other side of it, things open up in my life in a way where I realize it's a gift. Like, the pain is here to say, hey, are you done being unhappy? Because you can choose something else. And, at the time it feels like, don't bring this up. I don't want to feel this. There's a reason I've packed this away. And there is. And people have such extraordinary pain that I have such reverence for. But for me, once I'm willing to go toward it and feel it, it has been such a gift to me to be on the other side of that, to be freed of the way it locked me up by kind of storing it away.
Yeah, I mean, it gives us the freedom to express who we are. Even if society thinks it doesn't resemble happiness, it still resembles genuineness. And that's what we need. in our lives. We need to be genuine.
Life is cyclical. Life brings all of the richness that comes with the things that feel happy and the things that feel less happy. But it's just so also so relieving to set that down. I grew up in Texas, and Texas is wonderful. And I went to school in Philadelphia, and something I didn't realize till later, I went to school in Philadelphia because people were mean to me. And it was so relieving. In Texas, you had to be nice. And so you kind of had to search for what was true. And in Philadelphia, I didn't have to search anymore. People were just honest. I mean, they weren't all mean, of course, but there was something that was so relieving to me about being in that kind of culture where it's like, I'm not sugarcoating this. We're just speaking what's true. And so I don't have to search for it, and I don't have to pretend to be happy. Like, what an extraordinary amount of energy it takes to pretend to be something that you're not. It's quite a
Yeah.
relief to set that down.
It's liberating, it's empowering, and it's just freeing in general. So I wanted to ask you a question. I know you said your mom died when you were 11 years old. Did you find that as you got older and as you progressed through various developmental stages, that your grief kind of reinvented itself?
Something that happened 5 years after she died. We were visiting, my oldest sister was looking at colleges, and we visited my mom's college roommate lived where we were geographically, and gave me all these photos from my mother. And so it was a time where I remember sitting in the back of the car as my dad and my sister and I drove around, and just tears streaming down my face. And so there was something 5 years later where it's like it was time to unlock a piece of it, right? And and for me, there was so much just like that. Like, there would be every few years, maybe something would happen where a little bit more would come out, but it was quite locked away, really, until when I was 38, and this voice, again, can kind of hear various messages from it, but I think it was just saying, you're ready now. You've had this locked away. You're feeling like you should be happy in your life, but you're not because of this. So let's go unpack it now. You have the tools now to do it. We talked about the unconventional healing that I've used, and we might talk more about that. But I did talk therapy for years. And I think that it's what I needed. Like, I had such wonderful therapists, and they were so patient with me as I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to look at these things. So they kind of gave me the tools to be sweet to myself, to be curious. It was a gentle approach toward my pain. And then I was ready for a much deeper look at it when I was 38. But for a while, that's all I could do. And then again, I think it was just time. I was ready.
Yeah. And, from what I understand with grief, I mean, a loss for a child is experienced differently at age 12 than it is at maybe age 5 or at age 18 than it is
Sure.
at age 11, because you begin to think abstractly about a lot of different concepts, and particularly death. We re-experience our grief as it coincides with our developmental stages.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to talk about grief for a sec, I mean, for me, there was the grief of I lost my mom, and that's sad. Like, that's all I could hold. And within the time frame in the book, there was a lot of diving deep into that sadness and really feeling how devastated I was to have lost my mom. But then after the time frame of the book, after, the last couple of years, there's been other kinds of grief, like really understanding how hard it was to have a mother who was addicted to drugs, because
Yeah.
she left home when I was 11, but she had been absent, while she was home for years. And so, back to the different developmental stages, all along those ways, I was kind of freezing parts of myself because I didn't get the support I needed, and I didn't have that mother love that I needed. So there's been so much, it's just this vast geography. And part of it is the sadness of losing my mom. Part of it is the anger and other really kind of hard emotions to have about your parent, where it's like, you really failed me. I needed you. I didn't get what I needed. And I now need to just feel the anger that I couldn't feel then. If your parent is so weak, you can't be angry with them because there's nothing to push up against, right? Now I can let myself feel that anger safely because I can keep myself safe. At the time, it wasn't safe to feel anger or loneliness or sadness, whatever it was. I just had to stop feeling. Now I'm strong enough to be able to feel all those things. So I let those emotions come up when they do, and then they move through.
Well, and the other thing too is you mentioned the grief not related to death, and particularly losing a parent as you would have perceived a parent to be, to somebody that was going to be there for you, that was going to be
Right.
responsive to your needs. And when you have an addicted parent, it's impossible for them, because of their addiction, to be present. I mean, because the
Right.
addiction is really all consuming. So So there's that symbolic loss that you go through as far as losing the dream of a relationship that you would have had with your mom. I imagine at some points too, as you were re-experiencing your grief, that I'm sure that came into mind, especially in terms of milestones. It might have been your first prom, might have been your first date, it might have been graduation. For me, I always think of the people that aren't there as much as I do the ones that are there.
Right, right. I got married and I had my son before I had this wake up moment. So I didn't think much about my mom during those times. But afterward, like when I got a divorce, I wanted her there to make me tea. It's like this
Yeah.
this sucks. I
Yeah.
really wish that I had a mom here. And every Mother's Day is an interesting holiday because I celebrate with my son and then I acknowledge the loss that I had. So yeah, these things stay with you. But my experiences, I think what's so scary about pain is it feels like you might get stuck there. And what my experience has been is if I'm really willing to give myself to it, it moves through and then it's not the same. It's not that I always have the same feelings of sadness or anger or whatever it is. It does shift. It does change and who I am shifts after feeling those things.
Well, and as the title of your book, Pain is a Portal to Beauty. And so that seems like a good segue into tell our audience about your book and what you want readers to take away from it. I have a copy right here, so I'm going to flash it. And thank you, by the way. It's a great
Okay.
book, by the way. I'd highly
Oh,
recommend this
thanks.
to my audience. It's a really great book. There you go.
Yeah, it was such a gift to write it. Actually, back to grief, whenever I've gone into my grief, something opens up in me. And so there was a time where I was having some deep grief and really letting the abandonment that I felt from my mom wash over me. Not avoid it, not go talk to anyone about it, just really, you know, let it totally submerge me. And I woke up one day and one of the chapters just came out of me. I spent my entire life thinking I was a terrible writer. I mean, like the plague, I avoided creative writing classes. I just thought I was the worst writer. So to see this beautiful chapter come out of me, I was just totally shocked. And the whole book was like that. I would just put on some music that would inspire me, and words just flooded out of me. So this book, really, I wrote it. I, there was no intention in writing it. I didn't think that I would ever be an author, but it came through me and it was such a gift to me. So it's one of those things that, I hear what people think about the book. I hear how it impacts people and I'm delighted for that. But I don't have I want people to read this because it's like we're all on our own journey. So if somebody's drawn to it and they read it, that's fantastic. What it does is it offers my story, right? It offers an understanding of how these things came to be. It offers self-help, self-discovery, self-love that I discovered along the way, but not back to the conventional versus unconventional. I wouldn't tell anybody what to do because I have taken all this advice from other people and said, nope, not for me, this entire journey. So my sense is that people will read this and take what resonates and toss what doesn't resonate. But it's a very hopeful, you know, sweet book. Sometimes I listen to the audiobook, sometimes still, and I'm so like I'm moved to tears by the sweetness that came through me in this book. So it's a warm, hopeful book if somebody's looking for that kind of thing.
It's warm, it's hopeful, it's genuine. It's like,
Yeah.
reading it, it was kind of like having a conversation with you. It's like, you were talking about your story. It's very conversational. It's very authentic. I thought it was very well written, very impactful, um,
Thank you.
direct to the point. You put everything out on the table. There wasn't anything left unsaid about your journey and about where you are now.
Yeah. Some of my family members, my extended family is like, you wrote what? Like I couldn't believe how open you were. And it's just not, I just don't have that gene that tells me to keep things to myself. I'm happy to share my experience. So
Well, we share our experience. Our experience is not only cathartic for us, it's going to be inspirational to somebody else.
yeah.
And I think that's the power of storytelling. That's the power of sharing our journeys is that we get inspired. We inspire each other. And I get inspired by many people's journeys that I hear. I'm never too old to be inspired by that. I learn something new from everybody, and
Yeah.
which is pretty
Yeah.
cool. And when you open yourself
It
up to
is.
other people's stories and vice versa, that's how we learn from each other. Hence the mantra of the podcast for all students and teachers. So let's learn from each other. We can't learn if
Yeah.
we're unwilling to share with each other.
Yeah. Even just yesterday, I got an email from someone who found my book, and there are these little free libraries that people have in their neighborhoods. So she found my book in one of those, and she shared her story with me, and her story was so inspiring to me. So it was really a sweet thing where we had that connection because of storytelling. It is really quite powerful.
Yeah, it is. Let's talk about the role of psychedelics in your transformational journey. How did you come across psychedelic journeying? Tell us what that looks like. And I know you mentioned talk therapy that, was effective for you in some ways, but tell our audience why the role that psychedelics had was more effective for you than talk therapy.
I could see it as they're pieces that probably worked really well together. So I spent so much time in talk therapy that helped me kind of organize things. But then psychedelics, the way I got into psychedelics, I just got a random phone call from somebody who needed me to help a psychedelic educational institution who trains the guides. They wanted to expand globally. So they wanted me to build them a financial model that helped them basically look at their business plan from that perspective. I'd never heard of psychedelics. I mean, maybe I'd heard of psychedelics, but I didn't know how to spell the word psychedelics. Just it was not in my world. And because my mother was addicted to drugs, I kind of associated those things. And so it would never have been something that I considered. But then I heard the voice in the woods and my life was falling apart. I do workshops. I read all the books. I listen to the podcasts. And my life is still a tragedy. I mean, that's kind of a huge statement. So I needed to do something different. And psychedelics was just something that came into you know, my world. And when I talked to someone, they said that I might find value in trying that myself. So what that looked like for me was getting in touch with a guide, and she was a graduate of the school that I had consulted for. So the way that school trains their guides is that they start with MDMA, which is also known as ecstasy or Molly. And MDMA lowers the fear response so that you can approach feelings that feel too scary to approach otherwise. Pain can be really a scary thing. You don't want to go there. You don't know that you can handle it. So MDMA helps you find kind of the peacefulness and safety to do that. And of course, I did all of this with my guide there. So my guide really was trained in all the Western therapy stuff as well. So it was really a joining of the kind of the medicine and its vast intelligence and the kind of human and Western therapy, so that when something came up in my journey, my guide was already, she knew that that was my trauma, or she knew that these were feelings I was struggling with. So she could help me as I was navigating this journey. And really my first MDMA journey was just blissful. Like it was just, I felt, just like a being of golden light. It was really my first vision into, oh, I am a spiritual being. Before that, I really didn't have any spirituality in my life. And so it's kind of opened that understanding a little bit. And it helped me see that if I can work through my pain, let go of my pain, this is my experience underneath all of that. And then the second experience that I had was psilocybin, which are magic mushrooms.
Yeah.
And what they say about psychedelics is it shows you what you need to see. So maybe in that first journey, I really needed to see kind of not the destination, but the reality of who I am underneath all of these things that I perceive to be the truth, underneath the pain, underneath all these illusions that I have. And for psilocybin, I thought it would also be a really beautiful golden light kind of journey, and it was not. And the mushrooms really just, they took me to the underworld and they told me that I had a lot more pain to process. And so it was a very painful journey, and I didn't want to hear that truth. I thought that I had done so much work, but really it set the stage for basically this book to say, like, go toward your pain. If I go toward my pain, then I will discover who I really am. And so it just taught me to go toward grief. And I heard more voices during grieving sessions. I heard, the book came out of me during grieving sessions. I would walk outside and the colors were more vibrant, and the bark and the tree would stop me in amazement. It's just like my eyes were open to the beauty of the world in a way that they weren't before going toward the pain. And finally, I did ayahuasca. Um, and I spent the most time with that medicine. And it really, every journey was a mix of grief and bliss and, you know, stuff that my brain couldn't understand, just the medicine was at work in my body. But every time was an earth-shattering shift for me, that I saw the world differently, that I released something and I could show up differently in my life. So it was incredible, all of them with for me, I wouldn't have felt safe doing it by myself. I wouldn't, I just didn't have that kind of expertise. I do feel like I could probably do some of that by myself at this point, but at the time it was really important to me to have guides that I trusted in all of those experiences, I'll say.
This isn't a new concept. You look back
Right.
in the 1960s with Timothy Leary and Richard Albert with the LSD experiments at Harvard University. They talked about the importance and the role of psychedelics in terms of helping individuals gain insight, tap into their
Yeah.
creativity. But one of the things that they warned about was this should not be done unguided. It shouldn't be for individuals that have like some really underlying mental health concerns shouldn't be messing with this stuff.
Yeah.
And, but it turned out most of society didn't listen and everybody started tripping out. They started having really negative psychedelic experiences. But if an individual, let's say, wanted to have a psychedelic journey for the first time, they would get together with individuals who had previous experience or more extensive experience with that, and they would be guided through that. So what we're talking
Right.
about, Alexis, this isn't anything new. This has been around since the
Sure.
late 1960s. Um, and, it sounds like what you went through is was with an individuals who were very versed in the process, knew how to guide you through it, knew how to prepare you for it. And obviously it helped you break through to insights about yourself that maybe talk therapy by itself would not have gotten to that point.
Yeah, I think there's something about, I mean, first of all, you surrender. You don't have to. Apparently, not everybody does. And yeah, also, all I know is my experience, and that's all I'm able to speak to. But when you go in and you surrender to the medicine, then it takes you to these really deep levels of understanding. It takes you to your own wisdom. And and I didn't have that same level of safety. I didn't feel that same level of safety with another human. There's somehow when I would be with my therapist, at some point I wouldn't go there. I wouldn't go deeply with my therapist. But with the medicine, it was an experience where you surrender to it, you trust it. I don't know why, but I knew to trust the medicine, and it doesn't come with its own trauma. It doesn't come with its own lens. We as humans do our best to help each other, but we all bring our lens, right? So there was something to the kind of untainted nature of the medicine's wisdom where they were showing me what's true. They're showing me what's in me. And I could trust that in a way and surrender to that in a way that I couldn't with other humans. So that clearly, I'm sure, is not everybody's experience, but for me, it was really important. That's how I surrendered so deeply, was because it was this magical plant medicine that had this, ability to go there with me.
Well, you're right too. With the human experience, we bring our histories, past interactions into any situation,
Yeah.
and the nature of those histories are going to determine whether or not we're going to trust totally, we're going to trust to a certain extent, or not trust at all. But the other thing that I'm always
Yeah.
always a firm believer in is that everybody has an emotional comfort zone. So if you were working with me, I was
Mhm.
your therapist, and you tell me, Dave, I've gone as far as I want to go with this aspect of my life. I'm going to respect that and say, fine, because,
Sure.
the bottom line is I want to be able to build an ongoing therapeutic relationship with you. And it's not
Sure.
realistic for me to think that in the first session, you're going to be totally transparent. You're going to be feeling me out to an extent and saying, is this guy safe enough for me to trust, my innermost secrets with, or just to be able to trust enough where I believe he is going to be a competent guide for me in terms of where I need to be. And, we need to be able to make those determinations and find our emotional comfort zone in the process.
Yeah, and with psychedelics, the nature of the surrendering, once you're in there, it's a little bit like being at the top of a mountain and someone get pushed you, you got to get down. So there were times where certainly in ayahuasca where I was like, this is more than I can handle. I can't do this. I need to drink water. I need to come down. But then I would remember that the medicine knows what I can handle. And so the medicine took me as deeply as it knew I could go. And so I would kind of like coach myself during that time, say, no, I can stick with this. These medicines are like compassionate, loving, energies. And so they're, again, back to doing it safely with the right medicine and all of that stuff. But they're going to take you to where you can go. And that would help me actually stay in things that if I were not on the medicine, I would not have gone there. You learn so much during the journey that most of it is in the integration afterward, where either you had a conscious experience and you consciously then go change something in your life, or it wasn't something you could consciously understand and things just start to shift, like boundaries just become easier. All of a sudden you have more ease with saying no. Like there are just things that you learn and you go, okay, I feel different. Before this felt like far too big a step to take, but now it feels like something I can do. So there's so much during integration where I either processed what the medicine showed me, or things in my life would play out in a way that, oh my gosh, it was so hard. And on the other side of that, I was so much steadier. And being steady lets me be present with others and compassionate with others. I mean, it's just such a different place to be where I am now than where I was before the medicines. And I don't say that like I couldn't have gotten there without the medicines. I don't say that like people should go do this stuff. I'm just saying this was my path. And on this side of it, I can handle anything. Before I didn't believe that. And now I know that anything can happen and I'm okay.
Yeah. And obviously that process worked for you. Like you said, that combination of talk therapy and psychedelics, that was a great combination for you. Like you said, for another person, it might be something different, but that's what makes the world go
Yeah.
round. What works for one person isn't going to work for
Yeah.
another person. And it's just because, we have to respect each other's unique individual differences. But, and I had another guest on the show who, after intense grief and recovery from addiction, his psychedelic journeying was another that just opened him up, allowed him to surrender and embrace the true self that he was meant to be, to embrace the person
Yeah.
that he needed to be. So, I think whatever works,
Yeah.
do it, you know.
Right.
So thank you for sharing that so openly and honestly. It was a good education for me too to hear from another person who's actually gone through the process with psychedelics and the impact. So thank you again for that, Alexis.
Yeah. And I'll just say one final thing is that one of the last times I went to ayahuasca, let's say the last time I went to ayahuasca, second half of the second night. So we did 2 nights in a row. And the second half, the second night, the medicine, also called Mother Aya, told me that I didn't need to come back. And I was devastated because I wanted to come back because this has been such a meaningful part of my life. And I have gone back one time since then to make sure she meant that I need to come back. But it was like, you got what you needed. So you don't have to keep doing this, or you don't need to keep doing this. I was welcome to. But for me, there's also an element of like, isn't it cool to have these modalities that you use and then you don't need them anymore? Like there's a sense of like, I always need talk therapy, or I always need psychedelics, or I always need whatever my modality is. But for me, I really kind of move in and out of things. Again, back to the conventional wisdom versus, finding what works for you. Different things will work for different people. Different things will work for you at different times. So psychedelics was such an incredible part of my journey. And for now, it's not a part of my journey anymore. And so it's something that I can think about very fondly, but it's something in my past as of right this moment. Not, I won't say forever, nothing I'll say forever, but just that was very sad for me, but also very heartening. It's like, oh, this is something that you can use as a tool. And then at some point you don't have to keep using it. You won't need the tool anymore in the same way.
Mm. And that in and of itself has to be an empowering feeling, knowing that you can move forward without having to be reliant for the rest of your life on the tools that got you there.
Yeah. Isn't that great that we can start to embody these things ourselves?
Yeah. I used to be an addictions counselor back in the day, for 27 years. And there was this old adage in AA that you had to attend meetings for the rest of your life to stay sober. And I never really bought into that because I think the longer you become reliant on something, the harder it is to become completely empowered to take control of your own life. And
Yeah.
also support's going to look different as we evolve anyway. For individuals who are in recovery, AA might help in early recovery, but they may find other forms of support like a spiritual community, a religious community. I found this quote on the inside jacket of your book, or this passage: "What if being grateful isn't enough? What if I am meant for so much more?" And I know you alluded to the piece about gratefulness earlier, but can you elaborate on that that passage?
Yeah. I feel like the theme of this podcast is conventional wisdom. I want to go back to that too. Everything I heard was that I should be grateful. I was an Ivy League graduate and I had a great career and a lovely home and good friends and family. I had all the things. And so my understanding from all of this gratitude practice is that I should be grateful and something's wrong with me that I'm not.
Yeah.
And so it's something that you even can't even say out loud, because how dare you not be grateful for having all of this goodness in your life? And the voice in the woods just cut straight through that and said, your life is a tragedy. You know? And so there was an element of just, not that I don't feel gratitude, because I feel tons of gratitude, but there's an element of getting to feel what you feel.
Yeah.
And what I find is that when we're supposed to feel grateful, or supposed to feel happy, or supposed to feel all these things, then that's when we turn away from what is real. If you just sink into what you feel, whether it's happiness or gratitude or pain or frustration, anger, whatever it is, and you're just in the flow of life energy, and that leads you to organically be of the energy of gratitude. So for me, I think it's not so much about not being grateful, but it's not feeling like I need to be grateful.
Yeah.
I don't have to get myself there. I can just be exactly where I am. And that leads me to ultimately feeling filled and in awe and grateful and all those things. But it also leads me to having days where I feel angry and I feel frustrated and I feel sad. I mean, I feel all of things. And so this was an element of letting go of the construct that I should be grateful, because that is really something that kept me locked up. I can't look at my pain, because that means I'm not grateful for what I have. And now that is certainly not my understanding. My understanding is letting myself be fully immersed in whatever I feel will naturally lead to the gratitude, will naturally lead to the generosity, to the love, all the stuff that it will just flow from me. I don't have to make any of that happen. And my life was so much smaller when I was bound by that. So I don't, I'm, I am grateful for that, because everything led to where I am now. But now I live a much bigger life where I let everything flow through, versus the small life I had to construct with my, the more I learn on this path, the more I realize my brain has to stop being a part of it. I can't plan it. My ego can't be the one in charge, because it's so much, all it can think of is small things. If I can let go of all that, then the life energy flows through, and something much larger than I could have understood and could have imagined comes through me.
Yeah, it makes sense that if you just let life flow naturally, gratitude is going to follow anyway. You don't have to,
Yeah.
wake up every day and say, well, I have to be grateful for this, and you have to be grateful for that. And there's no such thing as have tos or shoulds. And
Yeah.
I think also two things can be true at the same time. We can still feel
Sure.
pain, we can still feel anger, but we can still feel grateful for other stuff in our life while we're still feeling angry.
Right.
You
There's
know,
room for all of it.
yeah, yeah. So, I know you alluded to in your book, Melody Beatty's Codependent No More. And I know
Mm.
that had a specific impact on you, on your thinking. Can you talk about how that book shaped your perspective of self and the world around you?
I heard the word codependent for so long, and it sounded like a bad word. And so I was sure that I wasn't codependent. It's like this convenient linking of like, oh, I know I don't do that. I'm not controlling. I'm great. I'm doing all the right things. Because I didn't know another way to be. And so when I was separated from my husband, another woman who had gotten divorced told me to read that book. And it just was so to the point and so clear. And it showed all these things that I did that were said to be codependent, that it was disappointing. It's like when you realize you're the one that needs to change, it's like, oh, bummer. That would be so much easier if it were not on me. But it was also so freeing, because things weren't working for so long in my marriage. We kept working at it for so many years, working, 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 and it just kept not working. And when you read something like Codependent No More, things click into place where you go, oh, it's not working, because, I get to just call that out. I don't have to say what it should be. I don't have to say that it needs to be something else. I don't have to contort myself in 1,000 different ways to try to make myself someone that I'm not to make this work. I just get to say what's here. And in my relationship, this is something I say in my book, I was always waiting for things to be different. And so one of the biggest takeaways I took was, it is what it is. There's no reason to like kind of get rid of the wishful thinking.
Yeah.
And just see things as they are. And that can be, of course, devastating, because if my marriage is not working, then I'm losing my marriage and I'm losing my family and these things that I desperately didn't want to do. But for me, the voice in the woods helped me see My grandfather died by suicide, and then my mother had her tragic demise, and then I had been lonely my whole life. And what's going to happen to my son? Like it became so clear that this is what is happening. My son will have the same trajectory if I don't change things. So there's kind of this interplay of I'm now willing to see what's there, and Codependent No More kind of gave me the roadmap to getting clear about what's there, and that's what you know helped me find some strength to not wish things away, to not tell myself some story about how things will be better, and just say, this is what's here. What do I want to do about it?
Yeah, she's done some terrific work in that whole field of codependency, and she's one of the experts. And I would had a smile on my face when I had seen that you had quoted her book several times in your own book. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, it tells us in terms of, codependency is, if I look at it simply as, you're taking care of everybody else's needs and you're sacrificing who you are for the sake of either buying into a narrative that society has said about this is how you should be, or this is what you should do, like getting married or have kids, or basically, just circumventing your own needs to take care of everybody else. And I think there's a balance with that. I don't think you want to become totally heartless, but you want to find that balance in terms of when do I, how do I find the balance between take care of myself and then taking care of others that I care about. And you can set the boundaries with who you devote that energy to, as far as that outer caring energy.
During my first ayahuasca ceremony, I thought of my sister and I thought I should send her healing energy. And Mother Aya said, no, keep that for yourself. And I didn't understand why at the time. But over time, I realized that, I have more work to do here. I have more to
Mhm.
care for here. And what happens for me is when I care for myself fully, then my love flows to other people without again, back to it just happened. I don't have to go make myself take care of someone. When I'm filled, then I have so much energy that just flows to other people. And so my love for my sister, I don't send her healing energy. It flows from me. And I don't need to call it healing energy as if I need to heal her. So I think the Codependent No More it can feel almost callous initially, because it's like, wait, if I pull that away, they're not cared for and I'm a bad person. All these labels can kind of get mixed in there. But what I realize is if I take care of myself, the most loving I ever am is when I'm the most loving to myself. And
Yeah.
so anytime I'm feeling kind of stingy with love for others, I realize that I need to love myself more, because then it
Yeah.
just happens after that.
Yeah, yeah, and we can't love others if we're not loving ourselves first. We can't take care of others that we care about if we're not taking care of ourselves first. Or as
Right.
my friend said, if our cup is empty, we can't fill anybody else's cup.
Right. Right. My perspective on that is that for so long it felt selfish because I had so little to give. And so if I take the crumbs that I had to give to others away, then again, they get nothing. But I think part of that was that I didn't understand the dynamics. I didn't understand that when I'm not taking care of myself, I have nothing to give. When I am taking care of myself, I have infinite stuff to give other people. So
Yeah.
I feel like when you're in that place, you haven't yet experienced being filled. And so you can't even imagine that that's actually true. But once you experience being filled, you're like, oh, this is the way to love other people, is loving myself. That's the
Yeah.
only way. Otherwise, it's depleting, it's self-sacrificial. That's not loving. That's not helping anybody, actually.
No, you're absolutely right. I'm going to ask you, there are two songs that I saw in your book, one in the beginning and one at the end. So I'm going to ask you if you could describe your journey to date using these two songs as bookends. The first is On the Nature of Daylight by Max Richter, and the second is Bloom by the Paper Kites.
Yeah, and The Nature of Daylight by Max Richter is such a beautiful song. It's in the movie Arrival, which is a very, very emotional movie. So when I was early on, after hearing the voice, I would go for walks in the woods and I would listen to that song, and it would just help me. It would help me find my grief. So the song really was a gift to me to help me approach my pain and give it a way to come up. So Max Richter's On the Nature of Daylight, I don't listen to it as much anymore because I'm not looking for that grief in the same way that I was, but it was like a chauffeur to help me find my grief early on. Such a beautiful song. And then by the end of the book, I discovered so much love for myself. And after I would listen to Bloom by the Paper Kites. It's such a sweet love song. And it is certainly portrayed as, a couple, as two people loving each other. So when my husband and I got a divorce, that's really what I wanted for my next relationship, was a deeply emotionally connected, loving relationship. And so I pictured having someone else and me kind of filling out that song, that sweet love. And I did repartner, and I have a partner that I love, and he loves me, and all of that. But really, that depth of tenderness that is portrayed in Bloom is really the love that I have discovered for myself, between me and me. I feel like the Bloom love is just swimming around and rediscovering myself. We touched on this a little bit. When I numbed as a kid, I lost all of these things about myself. I lost that I was a writer. I lost that I was a dancer and a singer, and all these things that I didn't know about myself, these creative outlets. And just the tenderness and sweetness that I have in me. So Bloom is kind of representative of, not of my love for and with another, but actually just with myself. And it's quite wonderful.
Yeah, I listened to both of those songs, and on The Nature of Daylight, it was a very hauntingly beautiful song, and
Yeah.
I could see that helping me, particularly in my early grief. With any of my
Mhm.
losses, that would get me in touch with that. It would be kind
Yeah.
of cathartic. It would allow me to feel. It would be a variety of different things. Like you, if I progressed in my own journey, I probably wouldn't listen to it as much. I'd go back there and listen to it, particularly if there were
Sure.
days I felt like I needed to get in touch with that. And Bloom is it's just a happy song, full
Mhm.
of sweetness. It's just a beautiful love song about the relationship, like you said, that you envision, but it's also about loving yourself. And
Yeah.
so those were two very unique bookends, two very opposite bookends.
Mhm.
Yeah, that kind of encapsulated your journey quite nicely. So thank you for going
Yeah.
there with me. Now, Alexis, I'm going to ask you another question that's totally unrelated to anything we've talked about so far, but it's a question that I want to get your reactions with in the moment. So I'm going to ask you this. If you could construct the perfect day for yourself, what would that perfect day look like?
Oh, that's a good one. Um, well, my son would be there, whatever I do. He would, you know, I might have to wrangle him into what I like to do, but he would be there with me. It, one of the most exciting things that's happened this year is that I bought a farm, and it, my partner's a winemaker, and so it's a vineyard, and he's kind of helping me learn the ropes for growing grapes. But there's a forest on the farm, and I just like to go prune trees. And it is the most bizarre thing, but after publishing my book last May, actually, all I wanted to do was go prune maples on his vineyard, on his property. And so I thought, I need to get my own property so that I can not make messes on other people's properties. So I just go prune trees, and it is just quite wonderful to be in nature. I mean, that's one of the things that, since waking up and doing the psychedelics, all I want to do is be outside and be in community with nature. So that's I'm sure there are other things. I love so many things, but that's the first thing that came to mind for a perfect day.
Well, that would be a perfect day in anybody's book. And I like spending time, particularly when it's nice. And I'm in upstate New York, so, we get some really nasty winters, but when it's
Yeah.
nice, I like to be outside. I like to
Yeah.
be outside, and nature is just such a calming influence, and it has a voice all of its own. It has a spirit all of its own. You know,
Yeah.
trees, the animals, everything speaks to you. It's good for our well-being to spend a little time out in nature.
Yeah, for sure.
Alexis, you've left us with so many good things today, so many good things about your journey, so many good things about what could be helpful to others. But I want you to give our audience one ultimate takeaway. If there's one ultimate thing you want to leave them with today, what would that be?
The thing that has been maybe most helpful and relieving to me is to say that wherever I am right now is right. And so whatever I'm feeling right now is right. And if I'm sad, I'm sad. And if I'm angry, I get to be angry. And if I have a part of me that judges me for being sad, I get to be judgmental. Like, it's like noticing every sensation you have as, I mean, right, just means to welcome it, right? Just to
Yeah,
love it and say, yes, that's there.
yeah,
There's so much rejection of feelings and so much rejection of where we are, that we should be somewhere else. And again, I get to be sweet to the part that thinks I should be somewhere else. It's just, I get to be sweet to myself every single step of the way. And what that does is, first of all, what a relief that I get to be where I am. It feels incredible. Dowding talks a lot about how the slow overcomes the fast, the soft overcomes the hard. There's this sense that like I should be doing more and getting, but the fastest way for me to do anything is to just sink into where I am and to honor that. So I would hope for everybody to honor exactly where they are. I mean, we are all our own master, our own compass. Like again, back to that unconventional wisdom. Like it's got to be unconventional because we know what we're here to do and we know how to guide ourselves. So the more you can tap into your own sensations in your own body, you'll find that for yourself.
Well, and everything we need is inside of us already. All we have to do is have the courage to go there and to trust
Yeah.
that inner voice. So thank you for that, Alexis.
Yeah.
My last question for you is if people want to get in touch with you, find out more about your book, purchase your book, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, the book is available everywhere online. My website is alexisleigh.com, Leigh, and you can reach out to me there. I'd be happy to hear from anybody.
Thank you. And I will make sure all your contact information gets in the episode notes before we go live. And with that, Alexis, thank you so much for such a great conversation today. I enjoyed it immensely, and maybe we can do this again in the future sometime.
Oh, I'd love it, Dave. Thanks so much for having me today.
You're welcome. And with that, that's a wrap on another episode of the Teaching Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Dave Roberts, wishing you peace.